get started. Cool. So as I'm going through this, I want you guys to stop me at any time to ask questions. The main goal for this call is to make sure that you guys have all your questions answered and that we have a clear understanding of what are the next steps from tomorrow, Friday, until next week, so on. Cool. So some things will keep communicating to you time and again. We'll also send Slack invites. Aseta, if you can help me, just share the Slack invite link on chat, and then we'll just go ahead. Awesome. So, yeah, welcome to the inaugural cohort of what we call Chapter Advanced Devlabs. So it's going to be more of a devlab for us, and it's what we call an acceleration program for proficient developers. So the only people who get into this program are people who already have previous experience as developers, either front-end or back-end, right? And what you're trying to do is accelerate you by fine-tuning certain skills, but making sure we prepare you professionally so that you're ready to seek developer jobs out there. I think the one big problem for a lot of developers is finding a job when you already have the skills, right? So what we do at Chaptr is we put you in front of employers, but at the same time, we make sure that through the community, you're learning and fine-tuning whatever skills that you still have gaps on, whether that's trying to learn cloud computing or that's just trying to see whether you can get to understand more about algorithms and data structures before you start seeking out jobs. Once again, a lot of people learn development in bootcamps. And the big problem about typical bootcamps is their focus is on technologies, but there's not as much time spent on computer science sort of foundations. And that's usually, it's good because the industry cares more about technologies, but having a foundation on the sort of developer elements, typical computer science. And those are some of the resources we'll share here, particularly on the algorithms and data structures. It's still essential for a lot of jobs as you start becoming more of a senior developer as well. But some of the things I'll talk about here, but the whole point is to fine-tune your development skills, prepare you career-wise, and at the same time, put you in front of employers out there. And the goal at the end of the day is to get a certification that's by AWS or Microsoft, right? So that's the first thing. But the main goal for a lot of you is to see whether you can get into a job as soon as possible. And some of you will get into a job before the program's over. Some of you will get into a job after the program. It does not matter. Our main goal is to put your profile in front of employers at any given point. Cool. So let's talk about the three key pillars of the program. I think I've talked about them from that particular introduction. So pillar number one of the program is we want to fine-tune your dev and cloud skills. So when we talk about fine-tuning your development skills, it's going to be mostly based around React. Pretty much front-end and back-end developers, all of you guys have an understanding of JavaScript. Just coming to understand that there's a lot of demand for React developers in the world right now. So if you understand React as a library and you're able to build things with React, whether you're a back-end or front-end engineer, the opportunities just increase, right? So that's the main goal. We will go through React. We've already gone through React. You have an advantage here. So you can skip through stuff or you can just work on the projects that we talk about. We'll talk about this more next week as well. But more importantly for a lot of you is you want to go ahead and fine-tune your cloud skills. So do you know how to use AWS? A lot of you already know how to use tools such as Heroku, Netlify. If you guys have heard about Cloudflare pages as well. So you're able to deploy your sites. You're able to work with cPanels as well. I understand that some of you are coming from a PHP background, so that's not a big issue over there. But a lot of companies are becoming reliant on the cloud. So do you know how to deploy a static application on a place like AWS Amplify, right? Or S3, when you think about it? Are you able to deploy a dynamic application on EC2 on AWS, right? And we'll also look at the sort of alternatives when it comes down to either Google Cloud or Microsoft Cloud. But our focus here will be on AWS, and you want to understand the cloud pretty well. Databases, scaling, deployment, virtual servers, how to do serverless functions as well. All these are things that you want to also go through over here, and we'll be sharing resources on that. Cool. Item number 2 here is to improve your career and professional profile. I will talk about this in a few in terms of what that's going to cover. And the final thing is you want to get links to our employer networks. Okay. So all this in 2 months. Calendar to be communicated by end of business week because the labs only start next week. But the reason we're doing this intro pretty early is because we need to understand so that we can start forwarding profiles to employer partners that are already looking for proficient developers like you. Okay, all this in 2 months, right? Calendar to be communicated with the main goal being having all developers sit the AWS Developer Associate examination or certification, however you want to call it. Cool. Up to there, any questions for me? Or is everything pretty clear? Okay, no questions. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them on the chat as well. Feel free to drop them as much as possible. So let's talk about pillar one, which is fine tune your developer skills. So pillar one comprises of two key things and then three extra bonuses. Actually, two key things and two supplementary things and then one bonus resource over here. So the two key things that we cover, one will be React front-end development. This is going to be more of a practical lab where you work with clones most of the time, you work on a weekly project, and you work on a capstone project as well. And this will be 5 weeks in general, so keep that in mind. It's going to be a 5-week React lab where it's going to be pretty project-based. So you have content on the LMS, right? But a lot of the things you'll be doing will be project-based with a goal of making sure you have 4 weekly projects and 1 major capstone at the end of that particular lab. So that's item number 1. You want to fine tune your React skills. And it's not only how you build with React, but also how do we deploy React applications on Cloudflare pages, right? We'll talk about the cloud on the second bit. Or how do you deploy it on different sort of places? How do you work with dynamic content with React using Next.js? Or how do you work with static content with React using Gatsby? We also cover some things on Redux, that's state management as well. So it's a full-on course here just to get you very apt to deal with React applications, which is pretty much the standard for the world today when it comes down to front-end development. A lot of companies you end up working in will be relying on React in one way or another. I think Angular is a bit dead right now. Okay, but that's a personal opinion. Cool. Number 2, AWS cloud computing. Here, this is not a personal opinion. If you do not know AWS, then high chances you don't know cloud. I'm not saying Microsoft and Google Cloud are not cloud architectures. Yes, they are, but their percentage of the market is too small to matter, right? But don't discount me. If you happen to be in a Google Cloud job, it will tend to pay more than your typical AWS job because there's less developers there. Microsoft is also upcoming very locally because they have very many enterprise clients as well. So I would not discount that. But at the end of the day, most of the jobs rely on AWS. Most companies rely on AWS. This is the market leader when it comes down to cloud computing. And this is the one tool that you need to be versed. At least know AWS and then start upskilling into some of these other tools. So I wouldn't discount them both. I think Microsoft is the clear second and Google Cloud is the upcoming player. IBM, yes, good for you if your companies are working on that. But I would say AWS, Azure, top 2, Google Cloud coming up pretty well, highly paying one if you get a job over there. And we have the extra ones like IBM, Oracle, which you'll get on a case-to-case basis. Okay, so in 5 weeks, you want to cover the fundamentals of cloud computing here. You want to cover a lot of the AWS resources. And the big problem about a tool like AWS, right, is it's bulky. There's a lot of things to learn, but we'll cover a lot of the things that matter here. So let me not get into the console, but probably we can just have a look at the AWS, not management console, just cool. So that's okay. When you think about AWS products, right, there's a chunk of them, but you want to be familiar with the most common ones that you use as developers, the ones that you'll keep using on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so why is this menu not loading? This should come through now. Yeah. So not solutions, let's do products, right? So one, you want to, on the analytics, not as much. I don't think we'll cover this as much, but what I can tell you is what we'll cover. And I'll just go category by category so that you understand what are some of the key points we'll be covering here. Why is it not clicking that menu? All I want is just the menu drop down. Okay, there we go. So analytics, not as much. Application integration, a bit. I think we'll talk about some of the tools over here. We won't cover blockchain, unfortunately. Not as much on business applications. But I think a lot of our things start when we get to compute. You want to be vast on how to use EC2 as well as Amazon Lightsail. So those are some of the two tools we'll be covering here primarily. When you get to containers, you want to work with Elastic Container Service as well. If you're to deploy a Docker application as well. Second, other thing here is databases. How are you able to have your database on the cloud? So options such as DynamoDB for NoSQL databases, Amazon Aurora if you want a high performance database, but more importantly, Amazon RDS, that's the relational database service. If you have a MySQL, Postgres, or Oracle SQL database as well. So these are some of the things that we'll cover on that front as well. On the developer tools, not so much here because these days AWS has an integration with VS Code. So it makes it very, very easy that you don't have to use Cloud9 like people used to use in the past. So that makes it quite easy. So not as much on developer tools. However, front-end web and mobile, very, very key. So a lot of you probably have heard about Firebase. You've probably used Firebase, but on AWS, you probably want to be familiar with Amplify. Cool. You also want to learn tools such as AppSync, which is just for integrating data from different sort of gateways. This one uses AppSync uses GraphQL, but if you're using REST APIs, then we'll also cover a bit on the Amazon API gateway. So those are some of the common ones that we do have to cover. Machine learning, not as much because this is more dev over here. Management and governance, not really. I think I've covered pretty much the key ones. Other sort of tools that I've not mentioned here or probably have not seen here that will come up time and again. On storage, you want to be able to work with S3. That's a very, very easy one to work with. When we come down to serverless, you want to be able to work with AWS Lambda functions as well. And some of the resources we cover here will communicate. So the main thing is you want to be versed with AWS and particularly the resources that you'll tend to use on a day-to-day basis. So serverless AWS Lambda is one key one. I've already talked about DynamoDB and Amazon API. Other things that might matter to you will be SNS for notifications, SES for email SMTP, in case you're building an application that relies on AWS for automated emails or automated or notifications as well. So I know this is a mouthful right now, but it's just like an overview of some of the products that when you come to the AWS website that you can see that we will cover when we talk about that sort of cloud computing aspect. Okay, but the main goal for us during AWS cloud computing is not just to throw you to the land of tools. Of course, you want to understand some of the common tools you end up using, but the goal is to also start preparing you for that certification exam, which if you're doing the AWS certification exam, you need to be versed with AWS cloud in one way or another. So that's one of the key reasons that because the certification is based on AWS as well, you want to do that. If by any chance we end up switching the cloud platform you're using, it will only be because we're getting certification waivers from a different company. So if Microsoft was to give us that offer of waivers for certifications, then we'd recommend you learn with Azure and you can also still upskill to AWS. So keep in mind, AWS is the one thing that we expect you to learn. But if we get certification waivers from an alternative company, you might have to learn like a second cloud platform just for the sake of that certification exam. Or most of the time, they always tell you the companies that use Azure in the first place. But AWS is the one thing you're sure we will cover over here. Okay, any questions for me? Okay, item number 3. You'll get resources on algorithms and data structures. Some of you already know where to get these resources. For us, is just to structure them and make sure we're sharing like a ballpark of algorithms that you can start practicing for. And this will be very, very essential for your tech interview. So understand algorithms, understand data structures. Most tech companies will ask you questions around this when you're looking for jobs. But the one thing any developer should know is by you understanding algorithms and data structures, it's not just for the sake of a job interview. It's for the sake of you understanding the optimization problems around development, which when you're just typically coding, you don't like it does not matter so much to you. But when you start talking about algorithms, you see how it matters. And the reason why this matters to a lot of companies is when you're building a tool that's being served to 1 million plus customers, right? When you're building tools that involve a lot of process as well, those microseconds in speed matter a lot because, yes, and it's not just the microseconds in speed that matter a lot in serving the content. It's also how much are we spending? And that's something you'll start seeing. When you talk about cloud computing, you're charged for pretty much every resource you use. So by knowing how to optimize your applications for efficiency and speed as well, you are not only doing cost minimization because everything on the cloud costs has a particular cost, but you're also improving the end speed of your product. And I know you guys are well familiar on using things that are slow versus things that are fast. The reason why YouTube is still a market leader on videos today is it serves videos the fastest to you. That's one of the things they have to serve as much as possible. But even more importantly is companies cannot survive if they do not optimize the cost of whatever dev resources they're having. So it's a two-way thing. Understand the efficiency of programming, and the goal here is to reduce cost and also increase the sort of speed of whatever things you're building, because those are the two key things that matter for any developer out there. Once again, time and money are a limited resource, and that's why algorithms and data structures matter in optimizing this. Cool. Number four, now resources and certification exam preparation. Now, this will be item number four. Usually, a lot of this certification exams, you have to pay for resources. That's usually a bit of a problem. And for us, it's just compiling resources that you can start using to prepare for whatever certification exam we communicate will be sitting at the end of the day. And then the final thing will now be what we have as a bonus. Every 6 weeks, we have a workshop on talk entrepreneurship, and we cover a lot of things from business model canvassing to things such as pitching. So I'll just communicate the curriculum for this. So I can just say some of the things we cover: business model canvas, value proposition canvas. When you hear me saying a lot of these canvas things like business models, there's a lot of things. Of course, some of you want to hear more about pitching and pitch decks and fundraising, all that kind of stuff. The main goal for this is, even as you're looking for a job right now, and that's the sort of primary objective for you, is anyone with technical skills, right? If you're innovative enough, you can add more value to the market by being an entrepreneur. And you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. Even in companies that hire you, you can be an intrapreneur. This is someone who works on innovation within a particular company. And having a good foundation on entrepreneurial skills is just usually a positive for anyone. So once again, it's not the most compulsory of things to do a chapter over here, but it's a resource that's available to you out there, so that if by any chance you had a dream of creating the next Uber for dogs or Uber for cats, you know the proper framework to do this. Okay, once again, do not go and create an Uber for dogs or Uber for cats. That's a stupid idea. But I think you get the gist of what I mean by saying we'll cover some entrepreneurship stuff. And I'll probably share the curriculum with you guys later this week as well. Any questions for me now that you're done with pillar number one? You guys are a bit silent. Yeah, you guys are a bit silent. Let's see whether we have questions. I'm a student in another school until December. How will I go about doing the Devlabs? It's part time. Um, it's part time. Workshops are only in the night. Does that answer your question, Charles? You could be working, you could be going to school, you could be doing anything else. The main thing is, do you have a 10 to 20 hour commitment weekly? Actually, 20-hour commitment weekly. Because a lot of the things will be part time and will be expecting you to cover a lot of ground by yourself out of the typical workshops. But once again, projects are compulsory, but it is part time. Charles, does that answer your question? Okay. Cool.
20 hours per week.
Yes, pretty much. Use that as the anchor. Use that as the anchor. Sawa sawa. Let's go to the next bit. That's career dev and job support. So far, you guys have been shortlisted based on your resumes. Some resumes need some work. Some are okay. Some are pretty good as well. So these are things we'll communicate. And the first thing that we want to do when it comes down to career dev and job support is help you build a resume that attracts employers. And this is probably one of the first tasks for any professional development program. Can you build a resume or CV that attracts employers? When someone looks at it, they understand your professional skills and they are pulled towards your profile in the first place. There's two ways to improve your resume as a developer. Um, One way to improve your resume as a developer is articulate your portfolio projects, particularly when you don't have work experience. The second way is work experience or projects, right? Have you worked on anything, whether it's volunteering that's related to whatever job you're applying. Once again, you want to make sure your resumes are anchored towards dev jobs as well. So keep that in mind. So there's two primary ways to improve your CV. That's portfolio. Second one is work experience. For portfolio, you can curate your own projects, talk about them. Don't make it simple projects like doing a to-do application. Everyone does that. Everyone does a to-do application. Think about something very, very creative. Have that as like your shortlist, 3 portfolio projects that you can even have as a section on your resume. And more importantly, whenever you're applying for a job, you can even have like up to 5, 10 projects. And every time before you apply to a particular job, you only include the 3 that matter most based on what skills that job is looking for. So that's the first way to optimize your resume, portfolio. And there's a YouTube video I'll share with you guys on the founder of Algo Expert and how he got his first Google job after coming off a bootcamp, and he had no work experience whatsoever. Keep in mind, no work experience whatsoever, but it's the weight of the project that I included there, the description, and the fact that when he went to an interview, he was able to explain what challenges he encountered when working on these projects and how he was able to build those particular projects and how those projects were in line with the role he was going to take up at Google that got him that job. Now he's the founder of Algo Expert, and he's the guy who's sharing resources on algorithms and data structures. So that's a very, very good story when you think about it. And that's a case of a guy who improved his resume through portfolio, right? Second bit is some of you guys are already working. Some of you guys have already worked. Some of you guys have done major projects already that are live as well. So this is a second way to talk about that. And then when you talk about work experience, it's not just about saying, I worked for company X. Once again, there's many companies in Kenya. Some of them have random names. You'll never know about any company. I doubt 80% of you probably had never heard about Chaptr before this as well. There's that as well, right? So there's a lot of companies out there. What matters in work experience is communicate. What were you working on over there? Have key points. I was working on building a React front-end application with blah, 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 blah. The moment you have clear points that are concise and communicate what your job role was there, or what are some of the challenges you solved, or what are some of your achievements over there, right? Or like we were able to build this, it's an application with 10,000 users, something of that sort. We're able to scale a database, and you can talk about how you went about database scalability. What was the initial problem? It's just concise, straight to the point, talks about the technicalities of things, major things that you're working on. That's the second way to improve your resume on this one. So that's the first thing we want to go through, resume CV building. Of course, the other things will be typical structure, education, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to talk about the obvious. I'm talking about the things that matter most for developers. Cool. Item number 2, professional development. So this is now where the typical career dev, where we talk about everything from LinkedIn, social media branding, networking, cold emailing, things of that sort. All these things that you encounter in your typical professional career that you just need an extra chat or two about. I think we go all the way in depth. I think last time we even did a personal finance thing where a finance expert was out here to talk to us about even how you can start investing your cash, what's the best way to go through it. It's just more professional development. Very, very good workshops. The ones that will matter most to you guys will be things such as the LinkedIn branding, will be things such as networking, because even if you don't get a job through Chaptr, these are skills that you want to keep up because that's how you're going to further your career moving on. Okay. Item number 3, dev portfolios and tech interview support. In fact, portfolios will start off this week. If you don't have a portfolio, we'll be requesting you to start building a portfolio. Building a portfolio is not hard. It's a HTML, CSS task, and you deploy on GitHub pages. So this is a very, very quick one. If you don't have a portfolio, you can do that. If you already have a domain and the extras, and you already have a hosting account, you can also do that. But we always request for developers, one, you want your GitHub to be quite neat. You want your GitHub to have highlight projects of some of the things you've done, but it does not hurt to take an hour or two to build a simple portfolio website that showcases what you do as a developer. And these are some of the things. And you can deploy that GitHub pages, github.io thing. Very, very quick one. And the second thing will be tech interview support here, where we'll be inviting HR professionals to also come and do one-on-one interviews with some of you randomly. So this will just be randomly scheduled as well. As we also try to improve you in terms of how you communicate during interviews and how you approach this. So full-on feedback on that is very, very key. Cool. This week we'll start off on dev portfolios. Now you can get feedback on that. And then tech interviews are things that we distribute all across the program. Cool. Number four, getting linked to employers, and we already said the first employer partner once we're forwarding profiles this week as well. That's why we've rushed the intro call as much as possible. But all across the program, we'll just be out there seeking more partnerships as well and making sure that whoever's sticking out and doing the most projects or whoever's resume is at the top of the stack at any given point is being pushed to employers. Once again, we have no limitations in terms of how many jobs people can get. It's just about the moment you get an interview, do it in the best way possible, so that you don't have to get back to resume forwarding again. So that's what I would say over here. But this is something that I can't talk about so much right now because I'm not the one in charge of this. And I think Jesse will communicate more of this. I think he's the guy who communicated this email in the first place. Cool. Then number five, access deals and opportunities for developers. And this does not only have to come from us. You guys will be part of our Slack channel. And in our Slack channel, whenever you see an opportunity, you see a good event that's good for people, or you see there's a good deal that has just come up, or there's like a job opportunity that wants applicants, it's just in your best interest to share. And this is just about us being resourceful. For us, our team will share opportunities that we have out there. It could range from people helping you to be freelancers if you want to start a freelance career, to job opportunities that we find that might be interesting for our students, right? These are opportunities that we do not necessarily have partnerships for that you have to apply to any major deals for developers, such as cloud credits, certification waivers, and things of that sort. All those are things that when we work on, when they come in, we communicate as much as possible with everyone in the database. Okay, I think I have a question. I did see someone or hear something. Okay. I think I said I shared the join Slack thing. Probably just
Not necessarily.
okay. That's okay. No other questions so far.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Any questions for me up to there? I think I have talked a lot. So let me just take a breathing, like some breathe. Let me breathe a bit before we go to the next bit. I think I've talked about all three pillars right now. Now we're going to how it works, and we'll talk about the income share contract and what it is before we get into it. Cool. Please ask me as many questions as possible before we go to the next step. Okay. It sounds like everything was that clear. Was it? If everything I've said is clear, just type down a yes on the chat so that I can know and we can go ahead. If everything that I've talked about is clear, just drop a yes on the chat and then we can go to the next step. How do you add animations? Cool. Okay, so I'll just get a status check on the comments here. Cool. Robert has a very, very good question. Do we pay for AWS certification? We'll communicate this. Once again, we are in touch with AWS and Microsoft, right? And we might get waivers. If we don't, we'll communicate this. The main goal is we want to get waivers or we want to get proper discounts before you guys have to see that certification. So keep that in mind. That's communication that will let you know in the next month or so. That's fine, Robert. Have I answered your question?
Cool. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, our goal is to strike a partnership in a way that you do not have to pay for that. So we will try intercept that as much as possible before the time for doing the certifications comes up. It's going to be AWS or Microsoft. Okay. Anything else? Most of the people here have dropped in yeses. I think we're good to go ahead. Okay, so let's talk about how it works. Okay, so how it works. So this is just a process that you'll be going through. So the first thing is you guys apply to the program, and our goal here was to understand your tech and academic background before jumping in. The main goal here was to make sure that people who are coming onto the program are people who are ready for full-time employment. If you're not ready for full-time employment, please communicate it as soon as possible. so that we know how best to approach it. But I think from your resumes, we're able to look at which are the people who are ready for full time. Yes.
There's a question on the chat with regards to whether you do continue the classes even if you land a job in between.
Yes, you continue. Even if you land a job in between, you continue. There's nothing. Classes are continue all through because it's still part time. I don't think any job is going to block you from continuing with classes, right? Yeah. So these things run concurrently. Pushing profiles to employers, you doing your interviews that we forward you to, and going on with the program. And different people based on your profile will get it at different times. There'll be people who get it in week 1, people who get it in week 4, week 5. The main thing is be consistent on the program, and whenever you get an interview thing, just make sure you attend that pretty well. Okay. So I hope I've answered that question. Marta, just let me wait for a yes from you, and then we can go ahead. Okay. Aseta, let me hope that's a yes. But you can just let me know in case there's any other issues there.
Yeah.
Okay. The second.
Yes.
For sure. Thank you very much. Second thing here is we shortlisted proficient developers with promising resumes. So the fact that you're here means you do have a promising resume. Once again, a lot of resumes need a bit of fine tuning. Some a lot, but the main goal is it's still a promising resume. So you're good, and we think that you have the potential to get a good dev job, hopefully by end of the year. Cool. Item number 3 is introduction to the program, and that's something that I'll be doing later on today. I've already introduced you guys to the program. The second thing will be introducing you guys to what an income share agreement is, and then the third thing will be doing a proper Q&A once both of those things have been sent home. Cool. Item number 4 will be confirming your income share contracts to be fully enrolled. And as soon as you do that, we start sending profiles to our hiring partners, and you'll start getting interviews based on your past experience before the program, right? So it's going to be based on your past experience before the program. We'll be communicating. Sometimes you'll just get a one-on-one chat from one of our team members telling you to do thing XXX to your resume, or to use the following resources that you can start preparing for your next interview, things of that sort. But as soon as you confirm your ISA, the next thing is we start sending profiles, and the proper workshops will start next week for React Lab. So just know, as soon as you confirm the ISA, whatever partners we have, we start sending profiles out to them. 6, commence the Devlabs with workshops, projects, and structured content. So this is something that will start off next week, where we'll now do Devlabs, and we're going to have structured content that's going to be available on our LMS. You'll have invites actually by tonight, because on the Devlabs, we've also created resources on tech interviews for you guys, which you'll need for most of you who have an interview this Friday. We also have workshops, and we also have projects which will communicate the calendar from next week as well. So keep in mind, our Monday workshop will be the precursor workshop to understanding what the Devlab program entails in detail. Cool. And then number 7, you can get an employment offer. This answers the question. Question that we've had, that someone, Marata has asked. You can get employment offer while still doing Devlabs or after. So you can get an employment offer while still doing it or after. Regardless, understand that we are always working to increase the number of job slots available. We're always working to get you out there as much as possible. And it's not just our work over here. I think it's supposed to be effort from both fronts. As we do whatever we can do, you also need to put in as much effort as possible in not only fine-tuning your developer profile, making sure your portfolio is good, making sure your resume is okay, but you're not barring you from applying to other jobs, other opportunities. All that you can do by yourself. We have no problem with that. You can do all that, but our goal here is, as we try to do as much as we can on this front, make sure whatever feedback you're getting, you implement. Make sure whatever workshops you have on Devlabs you're attending, and that you're making use of them to improve, particularly when it gets to the cloud aspect. Some of you already know React. The projects matter so much. These are projects that will be able to improve your portfolio, improve your resume. And for the cloud, if you miss out on a particular concept, you're just screwing yourself over whenever you need that skill to answer a particular question, or to do a particular thing whenever you get a sort of job thing. Because we want you guys to be AWS or Azure proficient developers at the end of the day. And we want you guys to have resumes that are appealing to people, whether you're applying for jobs by yourself, whether you're applying for jobs through our Chaptr employer network. Okay. Up to there, any questions? I think let's get the last round of questions here before we get to income share contracts, what they are, and what this means for this program. Okay, I'll just go ahead and escape, and then let me see whether there's anything on the chat. Cool. I think Marta, the last point has answered your question as well. Okay, now let's talk about income share agreements. What is an income share contract in the first place? And before I talk an income share contract, it's really nice to talk about the background of Chaptr as a company, which is probably something we've not mentioned so far. So first of all, I don't think I've introduced myself. Apologies, guys. That is poor etiquette. So my name is Cyril Mishino. I'm one of the founders of Chaptr. Aseta is actually one of our data science technical mentors. That's why you see me calling on him a lot over here. And probably just a good thing before we even talk about this is you guys can understand what our mission was. Cool. So we started Chaptr around 2019. And when we started Chaptr in 2019, our main goal was what can we do for students who cannot afford typical boot camps, right? Students who want to become developers. Developer jobs are on demand all across the world, right? And even if you don't get a job, it's very easy to get freelance gigs if you just get yourself out there. Pretty much everyone is reliant on tech as well. But then the cost of getting into tech has always been quite expensive for a lot of people. Think about a typical bootcamp. Or when you go to certain schools, they charge you on 60,000 for a 6-month program. The cheap ones will go for 100,000, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying people do have the cash to pay for this, and they can easily pay for that. But our problem is we had a lot of people whose family income could not allow paying 160,000 for 6 months that were being locked off from upskilling into a dev career, whether that's data science, whether that's web development, whether that's blockchain development. And when we started Chaptr, our biggest dream was what can we do to make sure that we democratize access to technical education where your family income matters least, and it's more about you getting the opportunity and only paying once you have a job off of it. Cool. So 2020, we had 20 admitted students. That's how it is because it started around December 2019. It was more of our pilot program, so there was a lot of mistakes and things that we had to learn from as well. And then this year, we were able to improve that program by having over 78 admitted students, right? But we're still improving our programs day in, day out. So keep in mind, we're a young company, but we're a young company that believes in a clear vision that education should not be barred by your family income. And that's why we were the first pioneers of income shares in Kenya, and we expect this to be a standard in Africa. One thing that I'd even tell you now, right now, is we don't want to just do ISAs for Chaptr alone. We're already seeking out partnerships with schools such as Moringa School or Jenga. Probably I should not be saying this, but what you're saying is we want to make this the standard for education financing in the future. And that's something Chaptr will keep doing, right? And we'll keep approaching partners to see how many people can start doing income shares from us being the first tech bootcamp to offer it to being more of like a pioneer in the industry for income share agreements. Okay, now understanding our background, understanding why we do this and why we offer income share agreements as an alternative to upfront payments. Now let me talk about what an ISA is in the first place. Okay, so first of all, an income share is not a loan or a credit. For most of you, when you go to universities, if you cannot afford the fees, you're forced to take a HELB loan. That's sad, right? Yeah, it is a bit sad because at times you could end up doing a degree that is very, very hard to get a job from. And then you're already in debt. And as soon as you graduate, they want you to start making monthly payments even when you're not employed. And that's why we have a student debt crisis in Kenya at the moment. But an ISA is not a loan or a credit. It's not a loan. Essentially, you could, the moment you graduate from an ISA, like there's no set amount that you have to pay back at the end of the day. Cool. So what is an ISA? It's usually an agreement to pay as percentage of income. And when I talk about income, I'm talking about earned income. So not what you inherited from your parents, right? Things that you've been able to earn because of your own personal skills. So that's what an ISA is. So because an ISA is an agreement to pay a percentage of your income, at no point will you be in a position where you cannot afford to pay back because it's pegged on your income. So if you're earning 0% of your income is zero. If you're earning 50,000, a percentage of your income will be a small portion of that particular 50,000. So at no point will an ISA add a burden that you personally cannot afford. Cool. So with ISAs, usually payments begin as soon as student graduates or drops out. But this is a special program. This is not your typical bootcamp program. It's not our typical Chaptr program as well, because this is a program that the ISA is only activated if you get an employment offer from a Chaptr partner, right? So the ISA we're talking about with this lot in particular is a job pegged ISA, an ISA that's only active if you get a job offer from one of the Chaptr partners, right? So is that clear? Cool. So it's not your typical bootcamp ISA where it's when you graduate or when you drop out, you start making payments because you are learning a lot. A lot of here, this is more of an accelerator for us. And if you are able to get an employment offer from any of our partners, that's the only time the ISA becomes active. If you get a job by yourself, go. Drop out, no stress, no burden on you whatsoever. If you get a job from us, what you're just saying, it's going to be a small percentage of your salary for 12 months. Okay, that's it. So it should not stop you from doing what you can to get a job by yourself because that will not be pegged to the ISA. If you want to drop out, no stress. But if you drop out, you'll cease getting the profile forwarding that we do or the sort of career support that we do for enrolled students. Okay. If you earn nothing in an ISA, you pay nothing. Once again, this is not a loan. So if you graduate Chaptr here without a job and you're earning nothing after you graduate here, once again, you pay nothing. A percent of zero is zero. That's the main thing. But also what you usually say is if you earn a lot, you don't pay past what we call a payment cap. And that's what we call a protection for high earners. So for some of you, you get higher paying jobs. So let's say in Kenya, typically developers, you get 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. The more you increase your experience, the more you can start attracting jobs that are 100,000, 200,000. If you get to a place like Microsoft, you might even get a job worth 400,000, right? Because they're trying to push up the anchor. In any case, where you get a job that's earning you as much as what you're seeing with Microsoft jobs, 200,000 per month, right? Then what we have is we have a payment cap in that as much as it's supposed to pay, like let's say 5% of your salary monthly for 12 months, we're also going to say that if you reach this particular amount, you don't have to pay anymore. An example is 5% of a million is 50,000. And that would be pretty much a salary, an average salary in Kenya. It does not make sense that you pay 50,000 for 12 months. That just does not make sense. And that's why we institute a payment cap. So as soon as you reach that, your ISA is over, even if your payment term is not over. Now let's talk about the typical ISA terms. Okay, I will do this so that we do that, and I'll peg it to what we have over here. Okay, so let's talk about typical ISA terms. Okay, so the investment you're making into you at Chaptr right now is pretty much, we'd say, what, 40,000, probably 50,000. We really cannot place it there because this is our inaugural advanced Devlabs, right? For most of our programs, we usually charge 20,000 every 5 weeks, and then you can always defer up to 80% of your program cost to an ISA. However, this program has like 2 key modules, so React Lab and AWS Cloud Computing, and then all these additional resources. So the value is just around 40,000, 50,000. What you're saying is we're not asking you to pay this amount whatsoever. In fact, we don't want anyone to pay upfront. What you're saying is if you get, and only if you get, a job from a Chaptr employer partner, it's going to be a 5% income share rate, so only 5% of your salary for 12 months. Okay. However, you do not pay if your monthly salary is below 24,000. So if your monthly salary is below 24,000, the expected payment from you is zero. If you hit 80,000, let's say you get a job giving you a million, right? And you start making, let's say 5% of a million is already 50,000 in the first month. What you're saying is as soon as your collective payments hit 80,000, you don't have to keep paying anymore. So that's the payment cap. At no point will you pass that amount. And this is for people who end up getting high earning jobs, right? And that's just to protect the people who already have very, very good resumes. And the final thing is we have a grace period. So once again, we've said some of you might get a job as soon as next week. Others might get a job when you graduate or within the program. But we have a grace period of up to 6 months after the program ends, where we still do typical job support and forwarding of your profiles. So that's what we call the grace period. So the grace period for this ISA, right, the time where the ISA is not active is um, as soon as you get a job, the ISA payments start on the next month, or 6 months, right? If 6 months after this thing you still do not have a job, then there's nothing. We just kill it over there. It means like we've not been able to successfully refer you to you, so the ISA will be invalid. But once again, I'm saying some of you will get a job as soon as next week, so ISA payments will start like in the next month, or some of you will get a job like after you graduate the program. So ISS will always start like 30 days after you start any typical employment, and you will not make more than 12 payments, or you will not make more than 80,000 in case you get a job like those ones from Microsoft, where you're earning insane amounts on a monthly basis. Okay. Now I want to answer questions on ISAs before we go to the finalization. Let me hear. Please ask a lot. Okay. I don't understand your question, Edna. Please just come again with the question.
Hello. So, if maybe you are in an internship and it's maybe after the 2 months, and no, maybe you're not able to quit right in the wording for maybe getting the jobs being started like when you finish now the program for chapter bootcamps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's okay. We have no problem. Once again, if you get an offer, it's all about communicating this offer to the employers. If employers really like you, you can communicate some of these things. But for us is yes, if you have an internship right now, you want to keep it, just communicate it with us. So even as you're doing the sort of profile thing, these are things we communicate with the hiring partners you're working with as well. So keep that in mind. I think the main goal you guys need to understand here is we're an ever-present team to you. We are just a Slack message away. So communicate anything you have to communicate. Even more importantly, when you have an offer on the table, when you have a critical question regarding the program or the ISAs, anything official, feel free to forward any questions. But for you, Edna, if you're working on an internship right now, keep it, right? And probably during the 6 month grace period, you can start sourcing for jobs then, or you can say that's when you want to be most active, or you can even start sourcing for jobs now with a goal of deferring your start date until you're done with the internship, if that's something you want to keep up. Okay. The main goal for a lot of you guys over here is you need to be ready for full-time employment. There's a reason why you are keen mostly on people either who are graduates of university or in their final year of university. When it comes down to this, is because those are people we are confident that if you got an offer tomorrow within a span of 6 months, right, you'd want to start that particular job. So that those are sort of the target of people we're trying to look at on this front. Okay, any questions in regards to ISAs? Okay, so what are the next steps for us on the ISA? I've already communicated this. You should understand what an income share rate is, what a payment term is, what a salary floor is, what the payment cap is, and the grace period on this front. What will be the next steps? So the next step will be I will send documentation on income share agreement so that you guys can see what a typical sample contract looks like, so that you guys have documentation talking about ISAs. In fact, we have a very, very good ISA communication on our website for those of you who have it, chapterglobal.com. There's a page there that talks is entirely based on ISAs that you can go ahead and look at. Yeah, there's a good page, chapterglobal.com/financing. You won't miss it. It's part of that top bar as well. That's a pretty good resource for you to work with when it comes down to that. So we'll also share docs as well. And then we'll also talk about blogs that talk, we'll also share blogs that talk about ISAs. And here we want to be very, very clear with you guys. Communicate blogs that talk about the benefits of income share agreements and blogs that talk about the drawbacks of income share agreements as well. You want to be vast with both of them, and you want to have full transparency with anyone who's getting into an ISA with us. Second thing is we'll have a quiz of 5 to 10 questions and a summary of the contract. This is the next step for a lot of you guys. As soon as you do the quiz, will be that quiz is just to ask you certain things about ISAs to make sure you've understood that, because we don't want, this is not terms and conditions that you just tick and say yes to. These are things that you have to be pretty vast with and you understand, right? So these are things that we want you to take your time and go through it, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Make sure you're well versed with it. This quiz is a very, very short quiz, but it gives us confidence that at least you understand what an ISA is before you decide to make any commitment. Okay, so what I will send, guys, is I will send this quiz later tonight, and the goal is for you guys to have it filled by tomorrow by 4 p.m. because after 4 p.m. we are sharing profiles with the first hiring partner who might be running coding interviews on Friday. So some of you might be getting interviews on Friday. So I just want you to have that in mind. This is urgent because we have our first set of interviews on Friday. That's urgent because you have our first interviews on Friday. I'll talk about the next steps as well. Cool. Then after that, we'll do the signed contracts and official doc submissions. That's your ID, KRA, PIN data on. These are things that now you'll do by end of week, not necessarily this. So you'll do a quiz and we'll also do a summary of what this contract entails, which is pretty much what I've communicated here. And the condition that it, because this is a pilot program, the Advanced Devlabs is a pilot program by Chaptr. This ISA is only active if you get an employment offer from a Chaptr partner. Okay, that's it. And then, yeah, I think I've said this a million times. Yes, note that this ISA applies only if you get a job offer from us, into bracket, our partners. Yeah, that's the sort of protection we're going to give to you because it's a pilot program and we don't want it to be risky in any way to students who join in. Once you're able to test out the value to pretty much all students, then we can start having normal structured ISAs. But for you guys, it's very, very clear. The ISA will only apply if you get a job offer from one of our partners. Okay, any questions, guys, before we talk about the next steps? Any questions on ISAs?
I wanted to ask about the ISA.
Yeah, go ahead.
The link that you just sent us.
Yeah.
I see an example here saying that Wanjiko cannot afford to pay tuition fees, blah, 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 something. So there's in bold, they said should not pay above the payment cap of 200,000.
Okay, once again, I want you to
I
want you to read this ISA. This is the thing. I want you to understand what Chaptr does. We are not only servicing ISAs for ourselves, we are servicing ISAs for other schools as well right now. So this is a general example. This is not your ISA example. Every student signs a very, very individualized contract, right? So if a student was getting into a typical bootcamp where you have to pay 20,000 for 6 months, right? 20,000 monthly for 6 months. That's about a 120,000 investment, right? So that will be definitely a very different ISA contract from you guys, where you're with us for about 2 months, and what you're saying the ultimate value of this thing is about 40,000, 50,000. I hope you understand me with this one, right? So this is an example of an ISA. It's just to explain what an ISA is, but it's not the figures. Rarely would people end up with the figures that we're seeing are communicated on that website as it is, unless the figures are affected by the sort of investment you get prior. So if you're getting an ISA for your university education, right, and your university education is worth 200,000, then you bet your payment term is going to be longer than 24 months. But if you're getting an ISA from Chaptr, Devlabs program, where it's more of a pilot program that we are saying we don't want any upfront payments from people, where we are saying you only have to pay if you get an employment partner from us, it's only 5% for 12 months with the payment cap of 80. If you got into another school that charges 160,000, right, then probably your ISA might even be 15% for 36 months. So I just want you to understand those differences and the figures that matter will be the figures that I share with you here, these figures here, and the figures that I share with you with the sample contract that I'll be sharing with you, which is pretty much the same thing I've talked about today. Does that answer your question? Cool. I want you to think of it. That's an example. We're saying instead of this person paying 100,000, she gets to pay 10% of her salary for 24 months on graduation. That's just a good example of how ISAs work. I hope that answers your question. Does it?
I basically wanted to know how you determine the payment cap.
How you determine the payment cap? Okay, so we determine the payment cap for ISAs based on industry standards. So ISAs are a thing that have been tested out first with Yale University back in the 80s all through. And usually the typical payment cap for an ISA is 2 times up. It shouldn't pass 3 times the initial program cost. We always try to base it around 2 times. And here's the reason. When schools are taking a risk on students through ISAs, there's usually a high chance of default. So I want you to think from a school perspective. If I was University of Nairobi and instead of getting a fee payment from 100 students, I decided to offer the students an income share agreement, right? Already by offering an income share agreement, I know there'll be some who will not be employed, right? So that already is you're losing value off of that. There'll be some who do not graduate, you're losing value off of that. And there'll be some who might end up earning below the salary floor, so you're losing value off of that. So what ISAs do is, because schools are taking a risk on students, because you could end up not paying back your ISA if you don't get a job, then the reward for the schools increase. It's just typical investment in that front. But what ISAs do pretty well, so for schools is the return has to be there to make sense for them, but it should not pass a particular point. There have been some exploitative schools in the past that used to have no payment cap. So even if you get a job that's worth $1 million, you just keep paying that percentage until your payment term is over. But what we realized is, even as you're trying to work through that reward structure, the one thing that's very, very key is student protection and the value that a lot of companies take in across the world. And you can look at schools such as Lambda School, you can look at Purdue University as well, is the payment cap is usually 2 or 2.5 times the initial program cost. Once again, those are the technical aspects when it comes down to what research we do as a company as we try to make ISAs more popular in Kenya. That answers your question?
Sure, thanks.
Cool. But once again, do research, we'll share blogs. These blogs also have industry averages on this as well. Feel free to read as much as possible. But as we've said, because this is a pilot program, the Devlabs is a pilot program, our ISA has a payment cap of 80. The salary floor is 24, this is equivalent to the KRA lowest income bracket. So you do not pay anything if you're earning below that as well. It's only 12 months, it's only 5%, and you have a grace period of up to 6 months just to get a job with the sort of support we give you. And this contract, because we want to protect you, because this is a pilot program for us, is only valid if you do get a job from a chapter employer partner. That's the big summary you can make at the end of the day. Cool. Now, second thing is, if you do not want to opt into the ISA, you can just let me know, and just let me know so that we don't have to push you through useless emails as well, right? That's just it for us. This is the only reward structure we have to keep doing what you're doing and getting you as close as possible to employers and in structuring a program that is able to enrich you as developers. And we're already taking a significant risk with this. But if you still do not want to be part of it, just let us know so that we can save time and probably give slots to other students, because we had to throw off at least half of applicants after doing this. So just let me know if you don't want to opt into this. That's a communication you can do right after this call, so that we can open up the slots to other students in the database as well, because there's slightly high demand for this. Okay. I think I'm done with that. I've communicated that. Once again, the key next steps that I'm going to type down over here is we'll send in the documentation. This is something I'm targeting to send it out to you guys tonight. Fill in the quiz by tomorrow, guys. I don't want to rush you on this one. This will be done by end of week. So the final ISA contract will be submitted by end of week. But I want to make sure that all of you guys are versed with the income share contract. That will be what is an income share contract, and you also have an idea of what will be the summary of the contract, pretty much the things I've talked about over here, right? And that you understand the key term for us is it only applies if you get a job offer from us. On the documentation and the summary, you also communicate other main clauses in that sort of contract so that you understand the legal liability that comes with that. And yes, if you do not want to opt in, I would suggest do not fill the quiz. If you want to opt in and you want us to start forwarding your profiles to employers, then just fill in the quiz and then we can start forwarding your resumes. Cool. As soon as you fill in the quiz, here's what we'll do. If you fill in the quiz, your resume, profile, portfolio, whatever you send to us, we've already tabulated this. We've already shortlisted people who will be going to their first employment partner. So some of you will have an interview as soon as Friday. And this is the only reason we want you guys to do the quiz sooner. So the sooner you do this, the better it is for us to forward it even faster, because these guys have a lot of job roles available and their deadline for interviews is this week, right? Probably extended version will probably be next week latest. But what you're saying is there's a couple of slots available right now. That means we have to rush through and make sure that those of you who want to go ahead and do an interview, we can do this as soon as possible so that you can be part of the recruitment drive that's happening this Friday as well. Okay, any question? Okay, now those are the next steps in regards to the ISA and regards to signing employment contracts, right? We already have each and everyone's resume. If you've been told to make changes on your resume, please do that before the end of do that tonight, ideally before noon, like lunchtime tomorrow, and make sure you submit if you've been told to make any edits on your resume. Yes, someone has a question. Yes, yeah, Charles has a very, very
yes,
good
I have
thing.
a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Is that Charles who's talking?
No, it's James.
Yeah. Yeah, Charles, go ahead. Go ahead.
So my question is,
Yeah.
My question is, so maybe I forgot. For the issues that are coming up, which positions have been advertised?
It's mostly software dev. Both backend and front end. I think because it's a recruitment drive for a lot of jobs, up to 300. That's why we're saying, because it's a lot of jobs, all of them have different profiles as well. And the coding interviews to just make sure you have the technical skills before they start routing you based on whatever background you have. So once again, it's quite diverse. The recruitment drive that's happening this Friday is one of the big ones, and it is quite diverse. So whether it's front end, back end, I think there'll be a couple of slots for either.
Okay, cool.
Sawa. So let's talk about the next steps this week. Actually tomorrow. You guys do not have time whatsoever. Now, this week, these are things that I want you guys to start getting. Yeah. Another question?
I had a question in the chat.
Yeah. You have a question in the chat. Will the interview be remote? Most likely. Most likely. I'll give you that. Keep in mind the interview for this week is a coding interview. So it's going to be more technical. So it's just more like...
There's also the other question on the above question.
The above question, I think, what type of React.js products will we do? Thank you. Finally, someone's asking questions about the program. I should have asked me this on the first half, but it's still fine. I'm going to answer it. Cool. But I think this will be answered even better on Monday and on later emails. So once again, when you talk about React development, is you want to, first of all, learn React by being able to replicate common applications that are out there in the world. Whether you want to replicate a Medium blog, right? Medium blogging application, whether you want to replicate Airbnb. What you're saying here is you want to have structured content on React before we start working on clones. That's the next bit of it. And we'll be working on clones of companies that, are working on things that speak certain value and things that are React suitable. So that's the second thing that we'll be doing. However, for the projects that you'll be doing, is we'll have like an ideation process where you get to either work on a corporate project or you work on an ideated project that comes down from you, which is based on what you've been learning React for, what sort of project can you ideate that has some value to the local market that you can end up using. Good idea is Someone was asking me whether they can do a project such as a restaurant website. People have done that. I don't think you need React for that. But a good one that I've had is someone wanted to create a collective React application whereby instead of you having like the application for Glovo, and then you have that for Uber Eats, and then you have one for which other food ordering application is out there? I don't know, just all the one, or even Bolt, right? Instead of having all those food applications, this person was creating a React application that's pegged on REST APIs that links up to databases of this, whereby on this one platform, you can just get a general scope of all places you can order food from. And using REST APIs, they can call through like all this data from Bolt, from Glovo, and from Uber Eats all at once. And when you make an order, it makes an order on that particular platform as well. So it was more of an aggregated food ordering application. Once again, this is a practice project. It's just for having fun. But if they want to push it out the market, I think that's something that you can easily push out if it does speak value to a lot of people. So we want you guys to work on projects that, like one, they're React friendly, but at the same time, we want you to be slightly creative on solving problems with your dev skills. And worst case scenario is we just work on mundane projects that we pre-generate for you. But how you learn is you'll be learning by building clones a lot of the time. Okay, I think I've blabbed a lot on that question, so probably I've not answered it very, very well. Just let me know if I've answered your question, Charles.
I think when you've mentioned the Airbnb and the collective,
Cool.
just that I wouldn't want to join make restaurants websites things. It would be.
Yes.
Yeah, it wouldn't be what.
Yes. So once again, weekly projects will be based on clones, and then the capstone projects will be more than just a clone. Sawa. Any question over there before I talk about the next steps for this week? Yes, interviews will be remote. Now I can finally relax and close off with the final bit of this. Okay, so this week, what are the objectives for us this week? And I'll just be typing it down as we go ahead. One thing we realized is a lot of you do not have proper portfolios. So if there's one thing I'll be asking you a lot this week is fine-tune your portfolio or build one if you don't have one. If you do not have one, right? What all I'm asking you guys to do is if you do your portfolio, submit so that we can review this as soon as possible. The one thing that we always want to get out of the way, like as early as possible, are your dev portfolios, because you only need HTML and CSS to do this. So submit this as soon as possible so that we can clear up the feedback, right? For this, right? We don't want to be worrying about portfolios later on. We can clear up the feedback for this. Most of the feedback you'll get will be more on like the design, right? It's going to be more on like the content, right? What can we have over there? It's going to be more on like the deployment. Is your portfolio, has it been deployed, whether it's GitHub pages or any other resource you use? Once again, you want to deploy it in a free place. You don't need to have your own domain, and the free places that we know of pretty well, GitHub pages, Cloudflare pages, right? All these are very, very good options. Any of you with additional options that we can add over here? But these are the ones I know that are free for sure, and there's no stress deploying their static websites. Cool. Cool. So you want to get feedback on all these aspects so that we are able to optimize it. And then once that is done, we shove it. And the only thing you'll be doing in your portfolio is as soon as you're done with a very interesting project, you just add it to your portfolio if you think it needs to be one of the shortlisted ones. So that's something that I'd request is have one by Sunday. Have one by Sunday, if not sooner, because we've seen your portfolio sites already. But we're saying have one by Sunday, if not sooner. If you already have one, thanks. If you already have one, you might also be getting feedback on that so that you start building upon it. Second thing I want you guys to be very vast with is a huge chunk of you will be having tech interviews on Friday, right? It's going to be a technical interview, so it's going to be coding related. Jesse will share resources. So once again, you'll get shared resources with you, right, on some of the things you need to look at. Okay, we'll try as much as possible to make sure that you get this tonight, but take your time. Some might be easy, you might already know it, but what you're just saying is if you feel like you need to brush up on certain things, please do. Please do, because you don't want to turn up on Friday and you're not up to the task for one of the for a recruitment drive that's taking in a lot of open slots as well. So you don't want to be thrown off just because you didn't have the base coding technicalities. Okay. Second thing is cool. Feedback on resumes. If you've gotten feedback, work on that before 1 p.m. tomorrow. Before 1 p.m. tomorrow. Yes, once again, we don't want to submit half-baked things, right? So work on that before 1 p.m. tomorrow. So that's the second thing that's out there. So your resume should be okay, and you should also start working on your coding interview stuff with the resources that we'll share with you. Cool. That's item number 3. Item number 3 is we've talked about ISAs, right? And we've talked about the key deadlines, right? So this is the entry point. So what you're doing here is we'll share more resources. Tonight. And as the first opt-in thing, all you have to do is, because you want to make sure everyone is versed with what an ISA is before they decide to opt in, is what you need to first of all do is do the ISA quiz. That will test out on whether you understand some common terms or typical stuff of the contract, right? And review the ISA summary. Only submit the quiz if you're okay with the ISA summary. Do not submit this if you do not want to opt into Chaptr whatsoever. Cool. And I'm saying this, if you do not want to opt in, tell me sooner so that we can open up these slots for someone else, because we are rushing the deadlines. And then the second and final opt-in, which is now the final one, will be signed contracts, right? Signed contracts to be submitted by Sunday 8 p.m. All this I'll share on email. Sunday 8 p.m. Okay. One good thing here is I can see Bratipa on the call. Bratipa is one of our students who's already on the React Labs as well, who's already done a bit of web dev bootcamps with us. And there's one thing that we tend to use a lot at Chaptr for any sort of development challenge, especially when you're working on group projects, right, or the capstones, and is UI UX design always begins with prototyping. If you do not know Figma, this is your week to do so. Cool. I don't know how many of you have worked with Figma before, how many of you have not, but what you're saying is if you do not know Figma, this is your week to work on, because any sort of UI UX design starts with prototyping, and Figma is the primary tool we use for prototyping. No one wants to pay for Adobe XD. Figma is out there, it's readily available, and we use this for pretty much all the capstone projects that you'll be using. We want to start from creating your wireframes, going to build a proper Figma prototype before you actually get to development. You always want to develop when you have a clear picture on whatever you're building is going to look like. So that's why we're saying if you're not versed in Figma, this is your week to upskill into that, and this is the first resource you'll get. What I will say is we'll make this the first resource we get linked to on Slack. Final things will be chapter onboarding, right? And for chapter onboarding, you'll get details on the program and calendar later this week. program and calendar later this week. You'll get invites to some of the tools that we use. That is Slack for communication. Just join in. What else do we use? How could I forget? Of course, we use GitHub for sharing certain resources as well. And more importantly, you'll be invited to the Chaptr LMS, where you'll be able to get curated content that we'll be having for this program as well. I think that's a good summary of what we need to do this week. But key things is get ready for the tech interviews on Friday. It's a coding interview for a start. Cool. Fine tune your portfolio by end of week. So I'll put the blue ones as things you need to do by end of week. End of week, fine tune your portfolio. End of week, you get UI. Make sure you're well versed with Figma. Those are two things you need to do. And then the things that are quite urgent, right? That very, very urgent. I'll put it as red. We've talked about ISAs. Fast opt-in is also a very, very urgent one tomorrow, because once you make the fast opt-in, that's when we'll start forwarding the stuff. And then the second and final opt-in will be the final contract by Sunday, 8 p.m. Cool. Once again, it's because we don't want you to sign a full contract when you do not have as much time to go through it as well. And then the green things are things that we need to do on Chaptr's side. So this is the work that's left for us, right? So share resources tonight. Those are the green things because it's more of our work rather than yours. And this is also something by end of week, so we'll put it as a blue. Okay, that's it from me, unless there's any final question. Yes, Kelvin. If you did submit a proper portfolio link, we will point out where portfolios need polishing. In fact, that's something that we'll probably get to with Jesse in a few. We'll talk about that. Particularly for those of you who already have portfolios. Once again, if you submitted a portfolio link, we'll let you know of that. If you did not submit a portfolio link, please work on a portfolio. Yes, but yes, you'll get feedback on those as well. And those are things that will keep improving over time. The fact that you already have one is a good one because it's a huge number. You'll be getting feedback like you won't all get at the same time. It's going to be coming one-on-one. So if you get a message on that, just keep that in mind. Just make sure you've joined Slack so that we can easily communicate some of this feedback on Slack pretty fast. Okay. And even before you get the next email, you can join Slack using the link that Aseta has shared over here. And as soon as you join Slack, we'll add you to the Advanced Level Program Slack channel. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, guys. That's it from me. Unless there's any additional questions, we want to finish exactly on time. We have 4 minutes remaining, so 2 or 3 questions that you guys can drop by me right
now. Yeah, I have one question there.
Yes.
I think they are.
What?
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so I've sent my question there in the chat.
You're in school till December. I think December is not bad. It still falls within the 6-month grace period, so it's still applicable for you. Make sense, Charles? Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, once again, communication. If you do get an offer before you're done with school, just communicate that so that people will have an understanding about that.
Sure.
Also, I think Dr. has asked if the applications are still open.
Unfortunately not, but just send them, let them apply, because for the next stint, we'll consider the next people first. If by any chance we open up, once again, if by any chance someone opts out, right, we'll always be going back to our database to invite someone else in to fill in that particular slot. So if you have someone out there, because filling the application is a 2-minute task, if you already have a resume, let them apply. And based on the weight of your resume, if someone opts out over here, we just bring in someone else. So just do that. There's no problem of referring people to the application. Even if the deadline for this program is done, and the people who apply now will either get into a future program or only get in if someone opts out. So keep that in mind. So that's all, guys. So we have 2 minutes to spare, and that's 2 minutes for you guys to go enjoy and watch a TikTok video. But thank you very much, guys, for joining this. I'm looking forward to interacting with you even more. I don't know that Seta, you're able to document anyone who is here so that we know anyone who is not here just for follow-ups.
Yeah, I did.
For sure. Thank you very much. Have a nice time, guys.